This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Is it just me, or does it feel like in the past year, the internet has felt more unsafe than usual? It feels like whenever I'm online nowadays, I'm in shark-infested waters. So I've found that the best shark repellent is NordVPN. Whether I'm on the go or at home, Nord keeps my browsing secure with an extra thick layer of next-generation encryption. And with just one Nord account, I'm able to lock down all of my devices, like my editing computer or my phone. But also, I found that I most often use NordVPN to watch region-locked content. I've gotta watch Love Island when it airs, okay? And the only way to do that is with a VPN. The British can't keep me out forever, okay? It's my God-given American right to watch this show. So if you want to get in on this deal and try NordVPN for yourself, you can get a 2-year plan at a huge discount, plus 4 additional months for free when you use my link nordvpn.com/cosmonaut. I should also mention that it is risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Again, in case you missed it, that's nordvpn.com/cosmonaut, or you can click the link in the description below.
Cosmonaut Quickie!
Rise up, Duner Nation. The Dune agenda is strong today. After strikes and delays, Dune Part 2 is finally here, and my feelings on it are much more complicated than I expected. See, I strangely wasn't all that excited to watch this movie. I tend to not get very hyped up for sequels that I know I'm gonna enjoy. Like, I was hotly anticipating the first movie because I didn't know if anybody could pull off making a Dune adaptation. I didn't know if Dune could be a good movie. But for this one, I was kind of like, yeah, I know it's gonna be good. I'll go see it eventually. But what really surprised me the most is that this movie is very different from the book. See, Dune Part 1 is a film that more or less is a direct adaptation of the first 2/3 of the first Dune book. For the most part, it is very faithful. Now, the material that's left over for Part 2 are basically just the chapters where Frank Herbert says, "And then they fought." That's kind of it. Most of the last chunk of the first Dune book is basically characters telling you what's happening off screen. So I wasn't exactly sure how they were going to turn that into a movie. And in this film, a lot of effort is made to expand the material that was more ambiguous in the book. I think the goal here was to add more character drama to a story that kind of doesn't care about character development. Paul's conflict in this narrative is much deeper than I expected, and most of the film revolves around him coming to terms with his role in Fremen society. Originally, he's a character that kind of just lets the plot happen to him, like that's kind of his purpose in the story. And here, he has a much more proactive approach. Without spoiling anything, Paul is a very different person from the beginning of the story to the end of it, and I really enjoyed watching that transformation. This movie also does a pretty good job of making Paul Atreides a badass. There are a lot of moments where I thought, damn, that shit was hard. Chani is a character who doesn't really get to say or do much in the first Dune book. She's basically just Paul's little girlfriend. But Zendaya Chani is a completely new take on the character. After seeing how little she got in the first movie, I'm glad she gets a lot more material to work with. Like, a significant part of the story focuses on how she feels about all the stuff that's going on. And her place in the story also fleshes out Fremen society a bit more. I like that not every Fremen thinks the same way or believes in the same things. They have overlying cultural similarities, but they're more diverse across the planet, which is a much more realistic take on them. Though I will say that I'm kind of conflicted on how I feel about Stilgar in this version of the story. Javier Bardem is doing an amazing job here, and out of every performance, I think he is the most immersed in his role. But at the same time, he kind of serves as comedic relief, which is something I never thought I'd say in relation to Dune. There's a lot more humor in this movie than I expected, and I do think this was in response to people complaining that the first one was dry and humorless. I do appreciate moments of levity in a pretty serious narrative, but there are times where the humor did pull me out just a little bit. It probably doesn't help that everybody in my theater thought this movie was fucking hilarious. Like, they would not stop laughing, even if the scene wasn't funny. However, I will say the main attraction here as far as the characters go is definitely Austin Butler. His face has been all over the marketing, and I've seen people say that he's kind of distracting and silly, and while I can see where they're coming from, I kind of enjoyed seeing him chew up the scenery. When he's introduced, he adds a completely different tone to the story. You could tell that he was having a lot of fun playing an evil little freak. And honestly, I was enjoying all of the Harkonnen scenes in general. This second movie does a much better job of making the Harkonnens seem like absolute monsters. All of their scenes are very cold, very sinister, and just overall uncomfortable. And this is contrasted very well with the Fremen. It makes the universe seem more diverse. The scenes on Gedi Prime are probably my favorite in the whole movie. The atmosphere is just unmatched. You've probably also heard that this movie has more action when compared to the first one, and that's honestly to be expected. If you watched the first one and you wanted more knife fights and sci-fi lasers, you're definitely gonna get it here. Really what I noticed immediately is that this feels like the writers really wanted to make Dune more digestible for modern audiences. Because if you've read Dune, you'll notice that there's really no action, and the characters are kind of stiff. The entire climax of the first book is basically people in a building explaining what's happening in the final battle. And I do understand that all of this would not really make for a good movie. These are the things that made people say that Dune is impossible to adapt into a film, because it is a very unconventional narrative. So yeah, this one does play up the spectacle a bit more, and at times it feels more like a revenge drama, and it takes the characters in directions that I didn't fully expect. One of my favorite characters from the book is given an overtly evil role in the narrative that they didn't really have in the original story, and I still think it works. See, I've said for years that I don't care if you change stuff from the source material as long as it serves for a better story. And with this movie, I kind of have to put my money where my mouth is. I love Dune as it is, flat characters and all, but I know deep down that if they adapted the rest of this book one-to-one, the only person who would like it is me and like maybe 5 other people that I know. And if you think about it, aside from a few strange additions, David Lynch's Dune is actually more accurate to the source material than this movie. And that movie's not very good. I do still like it though. It's kind of funny.
You mustn't speak!
This film at times does feel like the Hollywood version of Dune. There's more high-profile celebrities, more jokes, more action, and as a complete package, it does work. Even with all of the changes from the book, I do think that this story is treated with the respect that it deserves. You can tell that this film was made with an overlying love of Dune, and that every change that was made in service of a better story. However, for me, I do think that I enjoy Dune Part 1 just a little bit more. There are a lot of things I enjoy more in this one, but overall Part 1 was a film that did feel more atmospheric, more tonally consistent, and just a little more confident in itself. I do think that people who aren't big Dune fans and didn't love the first one but were intrigued by it are probably going to like this one a lot more. But I do think that most of the people who really love the book are probably going to prefer the first one. However, I did double feature these 2 movies, and I gotta say, they are at their best when viewed as a unified picture. I mean, this movie takes place like 5 minutes after the first one. It's very clear that they are meant to be watched one after the other. And in that context, I think Dune Part 2 shines. It does feel like all of the spectacle is loaded into this part of the story, and when you watch them back to back, that spectacle feels well earned. Even as a fan of the book, with how many changes they made, I had a lot of moments where I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and I did not expect that at all. And in the end, even though I wasn't all that excited to watch it, once I sat down, I was in it. I was fully immersed. So I'm gonna go ahead and give Dune Part 2 a 9 out of 10. Oh, but what the fuck happened to Thufir? Where the hell did he go?